Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. The subcommittee will come to order, and before we begin, I just want to mention that we will be operating under the 5-minute rule this afternoon, and I just want to, of course, say that we're going to be, before us is the FY 2019 Ag Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration related agencies appropriation bill. The subcommittee's discretionary allocation is $23.273 billion, and this bill was written to a level that is $14 million increase from FY18. This year, the subcommittee received nearly 6,000 bill and report requests that was submitted by 355 members. This bipartisan request conveyed every aspect of our covered every aspect of our bill and highlighted the importance of and the impact of programs under the subcommittee's jurisdiction. We have certainly tried to address all the requests that were made in a bipartisan manner, and we've put in program funding and also included language in the bill on report language in accordance with the House rules. There are a few topics that I'll just highlight as we move forward. First, the bill provides $3 billion for rural development discretionary programs, as well as $37.8 billion in loan levels for rural housing, rural business, and rural utility programs. And I, like many of you that serve on this subcommittee, that we come from rural districts, and the investment that we're making in this bill reflect our commitment to investing in the infrastructure of rural America. This bill provides funding for critical rural development programs, including water and waste loan and grant programs, broadband deployment programs, several housing programs, and the resources for programs operated by the Rural Business Cooperative Service. Resources have been provided to ensure all rental assistant contracts that serve the very low income residents will be renewed. Second, the bill provides $3.1 billion to continue addressing critical research issues affecting agriculture, which will not only ensure our nation has a stable and abundant food supply, but also maintain our country's competitiveness in the global marketplace. We do not support the proposed closure of the 20 research facilities that's included in the budget request, and the bill provides continued investment in ARS building and facility. The third thing in the bill that I want to highlight is the bill provides targeted increases for animal and plant pest and disease. In particular, we have increased funding to help address the devastating effects of citrus greening, as well as maintain funding to address disease threats in the poultry industry. To support America's farmers and ranchers who are vital to the economy of this country and our health and well-being, the bill provides important funding for farm loans and conservation programs. The bill has $1.7 billion for farm production and conservation mission areas that to ensure that local county farm service aid offices will be fully staffed, and that farm loan programs meet the current estimates of the demand, especially at a time when producers navigate the challenging farm economy and the foreign trade markets. The Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs Mission received $1.9 billion in funding to promote U.S. agricultural exports, remove barriers to trade, and provide U.S. commodities to those in need overseas through the Food for Peace, Food for Progress, and the McGovern-Dole program. Additionally, the bill provides funding for all of USDA's nutritional programs at levels that ensure all eligible participants will receive the assistance they need. This subcommittee, I think, has a proven track record of providing ample nutrition funding. Therefore, some programs have large carryover balances, which is reflected in the allocations for FY19. We've included $255 million for the Commodities Future Trading Commission. That is certainly a justifiable increase for the agency's new regulatory responsibilities. For the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, the bill provides $3.1 billion direct appropriations to assist the FDA in protecting and promoting public health. A highlight of the bill includes $308 million increase for the medical product safety. This marks one of the largest, if not the largest, investments in the advancement of medical innovation, competition, and regulatory science as it relates to FDA. With this increase, the bill provides support for manufacturing of safe and effective therapeutics, including continuous manufacturing of drugs and biological products. The bill continues to support the food safety activities associated with the Food Safety Modernization Act, and this subcommittee has provided more than $300 million for the FSMA activities since 2011. In closing, I'd like to ask for your support for this bill that's before us, and at this time I would like to recognize the ranking member of this subcommittee, Mr. Bishop, for any open remarks that he might like to have.
Thank you very much for yielding, Mr. Chairman. As chairman, you have continued to set a very cooperative tone, and I want to thank you for that. We've all worked very hard with even less time than we had last year to produce this bill. We were presented with a budget from the administration that would have cut nearly $1 billion in discretionary funding. Cuts to programs such as McGovern-Dole, Food for Peace, rural water and wastewater grants, and loans for single-family housing are just not acceptable. I'm pleased these vital programs were funded, and I'm largely satisfied with how the funding levels turned out. The bill provides $73.2 billion in mandatory funding for SNAP, otherwise known as food stamps. While this is $794 million below last year's level, it is consistent with current estimates. I understand that there may be a bigger fight coming with the Farm Bill, but I was very pleased to see that this bill does not include onerous legislative proposals that were made by the administration, such as harvest boxes. WIC is funded at $6 billion, which is slightly above the request level. Based on current estimates, this level shouldn't have any negative impact on the program. I was also pleased to see that the bill provides $1.5 billion for Food for Peace, $208 million for McGovern-Dole. Both of these programs were zeroed out by the President's request. However, the programs are only at or below their FY18 enacted levels. I hope that we'll be able to work to increase funding for both as we go through this process. I'm also pleased that we did not abandon rural communities the way that the President's budget request did. This bill makes some extremely important improvements to rural housing, water, and broadband programs. I was pleased to see the distance learning and telemedicine and broadband program was funded at $35 million. These grants are helping to spur innovative thinking in how we deliver services to rural America. In some cases, the results are life-saving. One of the more pressing issues in both rural and urban areas is the lack of grocery stores. Too many of our citizens live in food deserts and lack access to fresh fruit and vegetables. 19 grocery stores are about to close in Georgia, 9 of them in my district. Alarmingly, 3 counties in my district have no grocery store at all. I believe that we need a robust strategy to solve the issue of food deserts in America, and I'm very supportive of the Healthy Food Financing Initiative funded partly by the subcommittee. This bill funds it at $1 million, equal to the enacted level. I'd like to explore with the subcommittee and with my colleagues the possibility of increasing that level for this year. I'd also like to see if we can beef up funding for research at the 1890 institutions, specifically for Centers of Excellence. In 2015, on the occasion of the 125th anniversary of the Second Morrill Act of 1890, USDA announced the establishment of 3 Centers of Excellence at the 1890 land-grant universities. I believe these centers would be great resources to the agriculture community. Finally, I noticed that the coal, bishop, tobacco, and deeming language was not included in the subcommittee mark, but presumably will be dealt with at the full committee level. As the co-sponsor on the language with Mr. Cole, and after several years of attempting to get this language passed, we have come to the realization that we may need to make some major changes if we're going to move forward, specifically regarding underage use. E-vapor products offer an opportunity to transition adult smokers to a safer alternative. On a personal note, I was happy to see that FDA is taking youth tobacco prevention seriously. Last month, they announced new enforcement actions and a youth tobacco prevention plan to stop youth use of and access to Juul and other e-cigarettes. However, I believe that in Congress we should dramatically supplement the FDA's recently announced activities and dramatically expand the FDA and other federal agencies' enforcement authority and prevention activities. In particular, illegal access on the part of minors, including third-party and illegal internet sales of vaping equipment and e-cigarettes, should be a major target. I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Lloyd, Mr. Laura, and the other members of the committee as we go to the full committee to see if we can find a way to address this issue. I appreciate very much working with you, Mr. Chairman, working with the full committee chairman, Mr. Frelinghuysen, and our ranking member, Ms. Lowy. I may have, Mr. Chairman, done some things differently, but as always, we have some concerns with legislative and report language that we'll have to work through. But I think that this bill is a good start, and these markups represent the first step in a long process for which we have only a limited amount of time. I hope we can work together to address these issues as we move forward through the appropriations process. And with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back my time.
Thank you. And as always, this is a work in progress, and this is the first step, so we appreciate that. Let me just mention about the Bishop Cole language, and of course, it's not in the base of the bill, but we look forward to working with you as we move on down the line, and also with Ms. DeLauro and Ms. Lowy to make sure that children are protected. And I think there's not anybody in this building or anybody in this Congress that wants to see this made available to children. So we want to try to find a solution to make sure it's fair for everyone and make sure that it's that children are protected. So thank you all for always bringing that up. At this time, I'd like to recognize the full chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Frelinghuysen, for any comments you'd like to make.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this largely undisclosed location. I'd never been down here until a couple of years ago. I said, this would be a great place to have an office. But let me thank, I know that I do this on behalf of Ms. Lowy. We thank both Chairman Aderholt and the ranking member, Sandy Bishop, for the great work they've done on the bill. I think you've exercised the power of the purse well on behalf of the House of Representatives. The President and the administration can propose, but our responsibility is to dispose, and we'll have, I think, ample opportunity in the next couple of weeks to impact this bill, obviously, as it moves forward. But on behalf of the entire committee, I want to thank both of you for your very close working relationship. And yield back. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Lowy, please, we'd like to recognize you for any comments.
Thank you, and I thank you, Chairman Aderholt, Chairman Frelinghuysen, Ranking Member Bishop, for their work on this bill. The bill before us is an example of what can happen when the subcommittee is presented with healthy allocations. However, as we consider the fourth bill of the year, I must say once again that I am frustrated that the majority has departed from what has been long-standing committee practice of examining allocations for each subcommittee. This is far from regular order. Democrats are focused on investments to create jobs, grow the economy, help hardworking families, provide for our security. And when Republicans fail to govern responsibly and instead keep us in the dark on a complete set of allocations, we cannot adequately judge how our priorities may fare or how this bill fits into the larger picture. This is certainly true for the bill before us today. The fiscal year 2019 agricultural bill would maintain a number of important investments that help young people access healthy meals, including WIC, summer EBT, school meals, and kitchen equipment grants. However, it does fall short in several areas. While the bill maintains funding for McGovern-Dole, it would cut $216 million from Food for Peace, leading to increased hunger and insecurity around the world. The bill also fails to meet the growing needs of the FDA, which regulates more than $2.4 trillion worth of products consumed by Americans, including food, drugs, medical devices, and tobacco. And that amounts to Americans spending about 20 cents of every dollar on FDA-regulated goods. The FDA needs robust resources to ensure the safety of Americans, and while this bill would provide a sizable increase, it still falls $64 million short of the request. It is my hope that these levels can be increased as the process moves forward. As always, extraneous policy riders threaten this bill. I continue to be concerned about riders on human embryos, as well as the continuation of a government-funded ad campaign to promote GMO products. Now, I do want to express my appreciation and your acknowledgement and that of my friend, our distinguished, I was going to say chairman, my distinguished friend, Sanford Bishop.
Thank you.
I want to thank you both, and I appreciate that you were looking in my direction when you mentioned. I thank you really sincerely for not including harmful riders that would weaken the FDA's ability to regulate e-cigarettes and cigars. I have no doubt the subcommittee will debate this topic at full committee markup, but I do hope that this committee will not weaken, but rather strengthen our ability to take these addictive and dangerous products out of the hands of young people. I just have to say, and we'll discuss this more later on, but I continue to be shocked. I am doing roundtables all in my district, and 60% or more of these kids are vaping, and a good percentage of the parents are not really aware of the addictive nature of this. So I really do appreciate, and I hope we can work together on this issue. And also, I'm very pleased that the committee has lost its appetite for the Trump administration's condescending plan to replace about half of SNAP benefits with a box of non-perishable food. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the attention you've given to some very important issues. Thank you.
Okay. All right. At this time, any other member, let me just open it up, any other members who would like to make opening remarks? Yeah, Mr. Laurel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me acknowledge you, Chairman Aderholt, and our ranking member, Sanford Bishop. Really hard work on the subcommittee bill. I've had really the honor to chair the subcommittee in the past, and so I know firsthand the work that it takes, and you know how you deal with the complexity of the bill, but also with the complexity of the requests from members. So I thank both of you. I think the bill has some positive aspects, which I would like to highlight up front. I'm glad to see that the Food and Drug Administration receives a much-needed boost of additional resources. It is an increase of $308 million. We trust that the food that we eat, the medications that we take, and the medical devices we depend on have been evaluated with the utmost scrutiny by our government, and that our health and safety is its top priority. Of the institutions of our government, the FDA fulfills some of the most basic promises to American families. And I think it is our duty to help the FDA to fulfill that promise. The bill also includes long overdue increases in various USDA rural development programs, as well as the Rural Water and Waste Program, which funds infrastructure grants important to my home state of Connecticut. Also glad to see that the bill includes language that I introduced restricting the ability of Chinese chicken to end up on the plates of our school children. Very, very concerned about Americans consuming Chinese chicken, given China's quite outrageous history with food safety, especially now that the United States is moving forward with a rule allowing the importation of chicken raised and slaughtered in China. China has repeatedly faced serious challenges with weak enforcement of food safety laws and regulations, including problems specifically related to poultry products. However, with this language, at least our children will be protected. It also includes language supporting keeping the catfish inspection program at the United States Department of Agriculture, which does continuous inspection rather than the paltry 2% that is inspected by the Food and Drug Administration. Finally, I'm heartened that this bill and its funding covers what is needed for nutrition programs for women, infants, and children, and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. However, I am very concerned by some of the report language on the food stamp program. The food stamp program works. It works for those who need it most. It fed more than 44 million Americans in 2016 alone, including nearly 35,000 families in my district in Connecticut. It helps 1 in 4 children who would otherwise go to bed hungry. I've said this before, state of Connecticut is the richest state statistically in the country, primarily because of Fairfield County. And with that, in my district, the Greater New Haven district, 1 in 7 do not know where their next meal is coming from. Some people like to make reference to that as food insecurity. I like to call it what it is, and that's hunger. All of this talk about quote, program integrity is completely one-sided, especially when it is a known fact that fraud in the SNAP program is at one of the lowest levels of any federal agency. Where is the program integrity push with respect to USDA's farm programs? What about the crop insurance program, which has alarming levels of fraud, waste, and abuse? Just this week, the executive vice president of the National Corn Growers Association was quoted as saying, this is a quote, "There is more abuse and fraud in the crop insurance program than there is in the food stamp program. Yet, there is not any language in this bill regarding crop insurance program integrity." There's also language that relates to drug testing and food stamp job training. But I might add that funding in the Farm Bill only will allow it's about $30 per person on the issue of job training, $30 a month. That's not going to buy you anything in terms of job training. And the Farm Bill underfunds job training. Let me also mention to you that because of a weak, quote, actively engaged in farming rule, there are people who do not even live or work on farms in this country. They live in Manhattan and they get subsidies for farming somewhere else in the country. But they're able to receive a farm payment. Why don't we require them to till the soil, work on the land, if they want a farm subsidy? So I think this displays where our values lie. I'm also concerned to see language included that would prematurely assert USDA's jurisdiction over foods derived from cellular agriculture. Presently, I don't believe we know enough about the strengths and weaknesses of this type of food production. We should allow experts to weigh in before taking on this major policy implication. Our work here is so vital to our constituents and the American people. We need to preserve, we need to strengthen rural communities, support local businesses, help new farmers get set up to succeed, protect the public health and food safety. So I look forward to working with my colleagues to ensure that this bill does just that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Laurel. Oh, any other comments? Ms. Pingree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to you and the ranking member for the work you did. It's good when we can come together in a bipartisan way on many of these issues, and I greatly appreciate that. I associate myself with many of the remarks already made by my colleagues, but I just want to mention a few other things. I was very pleased to see value-added producer grants staying at a level funded at $16 million, as well as continuation for other key rural development programs that support housing, business, and utilities. These are very important in my state and greatly needed. I'm happy to see the increase in funding for Smith Lever, which funds cooperative extension in Maine and across the country. Our agents are just such tremendous resources for farmers and families. I'm also happy to see the increase in funding for the National Organic Program by $1.5 million. We've had a lot of conversations around fraudulent imports, and that's just an area where we have to invest the money to make sure that we're protecting the brand. I am concerned about the decrease of $1 million in the Organic Transition Program, which is important for vital research for farmers who are transitioning to organic. So I hope we can find a way possibly to restore that funding. Also, I'd like to see funding maintained for the Food Safety Outreach Program at the FY19 level of $7 million. Since we are coming upon the FSMA compliance dates, it does not seem like this is a good time to back away from the technical assistance that is so greatly needed in this time of transition for many farmers, and I know it's a big concern in my state. So those are a few areas that I hope we can work together before we come to the final markup. And again, I just want to thank you for the work you've done and the staff who put a lot of time into pulling all these complicated things together. So I yield back.
All right. Anything else? Yep, Mr. Buchanan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you and our ranking member, Bishop, for the leadership on this bill. Again, I'll associate with myself with many of the remarks that were already said. Just want to highlight, glad to see that the administration's attempts to cut programs like Women, Infants, and Children's Farmers Market Nutrition Program didn't exist. The Agricultural Research Program, Food for Peace, McGovern-Dole, and rural housing. The bill continues to support the dairy industry, which is important in my state. I appreciate that. Thankful that we were able to include funding for cranberry research, specifically to protect against crop diseases, which are important in my state. Broadband funding, 5% above the 2018 enacted levels. Very, very happy to see that, including $550 million for broadband loans and grants that builds on the $600 million provided in the 2018 bill. While I'm pleased to see that funding, I hope at the committee level we might be able to address the speed issue, minimum speeds used in RUS, so it's functional and usable. 4 megabytes doesn't really work anymore, and that we can make sure that this funding is used in a transparent way to help underserved and unserved areas. And just happy to see the strong Buy American protections for steel and iron in the water infrastructure projects financed by RUS's Rural Water Program. So again, just want to thank you for all the work and appreciate it.
Okay. Anything else? If there's no further comments and no amendments, I'd like to recognize the distinguished member from California for a motion.
I move that the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
Okay. The question is on the gentleman's motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. Subcommittee. All right. I ask for unanimous consent that the staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and report. Without objection, so ordered. Subcommittee is adjourned.
Yes, please.